Sergei Rachmaninoff is one of the world's most beloved composers. His music fills concert halls. It grabs audiences from the first note. It moves them to tears. And yet, for much of the 20th century, Rachmaninoff's music was dismissed out of hands by the music critics. Performers love presenting Rachmaninoff, myself included. You hear it, it's perfect, it speaks to you right away. And yet, for much of the 20th century, the critical establishment treated Rachmaninoff as something of a problem. In the 1954 edition of Grove's Dictionary of Music, he was dismissed out of hand. It reads in part, "His music is well constructed and effective, but monotonous in texture, which consists in essence mainly of artificial and gushing tunes. The enormous popular success some few of Rachmaninoff's works had in his lifetime is not likely to last." Now, how could music that so many found profoundly beautiful and moving be dismissed by critics so harshly? Is there something going on here deeper than taste alone? Rachmaninoff was born in Russia in 1873, and his music fits into an aesthetic era that belonged to people like Tchaikovsky and the late Romantics. His music, like many of the late Romantic composers, celebrates emotional clarity, long expressive melodic lines, and chromatic harmony. But Rachmaninoff's problem was he lived too far into the 20th century, only passing away in 1943, and by then musical aesthetics had shifted. Music at that point was increasingly defined by breaking tonality, breaking harmony, and some would even say breaking beauty. So why didn't Rachmaninoff follow these trends? Why did his music double down on emotional sincerity, long expressive lines, and rich harmony? I believe the reason is that for Rachmaninoff, his music had to come from the heart and speak to the heart. Now, that attitude placed him squarely on the wrong side of history at that point, because music had shifted around him. It just wasn't doing that anymore. The 20th century demanded things like disruption, experimentation, novelty, and Rachmaninoff refused to abandon his ideals. So with aesthetic fashion turned against him, where did that leave Rachmaninoff? To answer that question, consider that composers like Brahms and Tchaikovsky and even Mahler had died much earlier than Rachmaninoff. Mahler was the only one who lived into the 20th century, only passing away in 1911. So these composers neatly fit into a certain historical context of being late Romantics. Rachmaninoff, however, outlived that by several decades. To me, it seems totally unfair to think that had he died in 1910, he would have simply been considered a great Romantic composer. But because he lived so far into the 20th century, he somehow failed modernism. Now, by 1918, Rachmaninoff had moved to America, never to return to Russia again. And from this point, he started to become more well known as a concert pianist and less as a composer. And the critics' judgments didn't help with this. Still, it's a little bit, weird to me that audiences loved him both as a performer and as a composer, while critics were just tearing his music apart. That tension between the popularity of his music with audiences and what the critics thought of him started to ruin his reputation in a very strange way. His music never fell out of fashion, but somehow it became relegated officially by the critics to becoming second-tier music. I have a story I can relate about a performance I did of Rachmaninoff's cello sonata, specifically the slow movement. I did this performance about 30 years ago when I was a student. One of my teachers came back afterwards, and he was visibly moved. He had tears in his eyes, and he said to me, "I just love that Rachmaninoff, but of course, Rachmaninoff is a second-rate composer." Well, that shocked me, because clearly he was moved by the music itself, but somehow he still felt constrained by what the official critics would say about Rachmaninoff as a composer. Well, luckily, in the past few decades, things have finally changed. You see, audiences never gave up loving Rachmaninoff's music, and there's a new generation of critics who have finally had to admit Okay, Rachmaninoff is just a great romantic composer. So what if he was a little bit out of his time? Today, the 20th century is in the rearview mirror. We don't care so much about disruption and novelty for its own sake, and composers are evaluated more holistically. No one needs to apologize for putting Rachmaninoff on their programs. He's simply appreciated as a great composer. So it turns out that Rachmaninoff's music was never the problem. It was the critics' problem, as so often is the case. His music didn't need rehabilitation. It turns out that we did. We needed to be able to just accept it for what it is. And what I love about Rachmaninoff is that when beauty somehow became unfashionable, Rachmaninoff refused to move on. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with a friend. And let me know what you think in the comments. Is Rachmaninoff a second-rate composer, or do you consider him a great composer? I'm really interested to hear what you think. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.